In 2014, the IPTF began a project requiring the entire protection insurance industry, including insurers, reinsurers, service providers, and providers of added value benefits, to come together to unite behind a common cause, highlighting the impact that income protection can have. 7Families were selected by the IPTF working in partnership with Disability Rights UK. Each had suffered an income shock and did not have income protection in place. For 12 months, each family received the payments an income protection policy would have afforded them. And they were also given access to a case manager and the value-added services that would have been included with a policy. The families were filmed on a regular basis, and the result was a series of video case studies owned by the industry as a whole for use by advisors and insurers to demonstrate the value of income protection with clients. 10 years on, we're revisiting the project, highlighting the family stories and speaking to advisors about how these stories can be used to highlight the valuable role that income protection plays. We'll also be hearing from key industry figures about the legacy of 7Families.
I was lucky enough to be part of the working group on the 7Families project, and it was quite the experience to see the amount of work and extent of the collaboration that happened to bring the project to life. The dedication and focus of that core group will stay with me. They really believed in what they were doing, and I think that shines through in the resulting videos. I recall very vividly how we would review the video content before it was released, and some of the films were incredibly hard to watch. Paul Pickford's story, of course, was very moving, and I always found Nikki Thornley's videos particularly emotional. At the time, I had 2 children of a similar age to Nikki, and I was living the reality of bringing up young children with all the challenges that brings with it. Watching Nikki navigate those same challenges from a wheelchair with such tremendous spirit was humbling and really put things into perspective for me. The power of 7Families was in the differences between the stories. They represented so many different backgrounds, careers, the journeys were so markedly different, and yet each one of the stories provided hope, because as the story played out, we saw the impact the income protection payments were having and the difference the support that surrounds each policy made.
At the time of 7Families, I was working at a reinsurer and had a toddler and baby number 2 on the way. Like Joe, felt Nikki's story particularly closely as the classic, for a family like ours, everything could change in a moment. As well as bringing the product to life for advisors, I think it also did the same for many within insurers and reinsurers as well. That's why I think the ripple effect of the campaign continues to be felt. Stories are shared more frequently, although of course there could always be more. But I also think the very design of income protection products was influenced by the power of the campaign. Some people were nervous about the ethics of just offering 1 year's worth of money and benefits to people, but I think the value that was experienced by the 7Families gave confidence both to push for more value-added benefits, rehabilitation programs, and to understand that for many, shorter payout products can still make a massive difference.
Just over a decade ago, I wore a very different hat than I do today. I was head of sales for a GS Protect, which of course then went on to be AIG Life. I sat with industry peers and IPTF members as we pondered the ambitious idea of the 7Families project. Collaboration seemed implausible, but the incredibly tenacious and passionate team within the IPTF made it happen. It's now a prime example of industry unity and powerful storytelling. The stories remain as powerful and impactful today as they were then. And I hope with my new IPTF hat on, by celebrating the 7Families' 10th anniversary, we can reignite some of that industry unity and allow the next generation to benefit from this amazing project.
In 2014, we faced a situation where the income protection market was becalmed and membership of the IPTF was eroding. More concerning was the feeling that many advisors didn't believe that there was a need for income protection, and that the risk of long-term disability was unlikely. Karen Lloyd, who was part of the IPTF executive team, came up with the idea of identifying some real-life case studies that we would follow and use to demonstrate the impact of income protection. We faced several challenges in setting up the project that became known as 7Families. These included a fragmented industry, inertia in the advisor community, and convincing our funders to invest in a project the like of which hadn't been seen before and which required an unprecedented level of collaboration. Once we had our funding and convinced the industry to work together, we then faced the challenge of finding 7Families willing to work with us on the project. It was important that the model within the project was robust and accurately replicated income protection, and that the families' experiences accurately reflected both the value of income protection as well as the disturbance experienced after an income shock. The project wasn't without its challenges, but the IPTF pulled together a team who remained focused on what we were trying to achieve. And as well as overcoming all of the challenges and producing the case studies we had in mind, we learned a lot of lessons along the way. 7Families was equally funded by all those involved and independently branded, which means it exists for the benefit of advisors and the industry as a whole. We'd never seen collaboration on such a scale before, but the benefits of this approach were clear. Finally, 7Families taught us the power of storytelling, which is a lesson we mustn't forget.
To help highlight why these moving stories could still prove useful to advisors, we asked our 7 advisors to review the stories and share with us their key points and how they could be used by advisors, especially when talking with clients.
For me, learning that there are nice people around that actually care, that has been a massive impact. To actually have somebody that phones up every month to say, how you doing? How you feeling? Is everything going okay? That's just really, really lovely, and you know, it's been great. Not that we've had any major issues to bring, but it's just nice to feel that somebody cares about that. The 7Families thing has been just an amazing adventure.
Yeah.
And an enormous blessing, and a huge education. You know, all those years ago when we were offered loss of income insurance, perhaps we should have actually kept it up, but we didn't, because we didn't think we needed it. So it was a big lesson learned, really.
Yeah. The 7Families project has proved to us the real value of this. We've only had a certain amount of money for a year and the support that goes with it, but that's just made such a huge difference. And for the cost of one of these policies, it's well worth considering.
The Clarkes are just an ordinary family living a fairly standard life. They both have good jobs, they have a grown-up family, and are living quite a good life themselves. Tracey had an eye defect from birth and was not able to see out of one eye, but they managed to cope with that. The second point I'd like to mention is that life has a habit of throwing a curveball just when you least expect it, and there's nothing you can do about it. In this case, Tracey's other eye started to deteriorate quite quickly, and in 3 months' time, her vision almost completely disappeared. As well as that, her husband, Tim, lost his job, and all of a sudden, they would find themselves on benefits. Okay, not a position anybody particularly wants to be in. They were forced to sell their home, to pay off the mortgage, and to pay off debts. This is a realistic chain of events when all of a sudden life seems to be very good, a curveball comes in, and the challenge is, what are you going to do about it? When the 7Families came into this, what happened is that it gave them hope for the future. It gave them something that they could work with. They were receiving their benefits, but the first payments they used some to buy boots, to buy laptops, and just gave them some hope really in the future. And I think Tim pointed it out, what he valued from 7Families is that it helped them invest in the future. And that's all really that these payments could have done, really.
I never really looked into financial support or protecting my income because I didn't think that needed to be protected because I was still working. Whereas now, through the 7Families, it's sort of knowing that yes, it does need protecting, it does need looking into, because illnesses happen at any time, any stage, because we just don't know what is around the corner.
With Daniel's story, what I found particularly interesting was the fact that he tapped into so many additional services that an income protection policy can provide. He spoke very little about the financial benefit that the policy would offer, but more around the support services that were available to him. He did use some of the income provided to him to support his recovery through oxygen treatment and walking aids. But what was most important to Daniel was the occupational support available through his case manager, which allowed him to start exploring different options back into the world of work. And I think that's really important for any claimant to remember, is that actually income protection is there to support you financially, but you can't, or very few people will be able to sustain a good quality of living on simply their income protection payout, because it is less than the income that they're used to generating. But all of the support services and tools are there to encourage you back into a world of financial stability through earning your own income again. Whether that's in your same occupation that you left, or it's a different occupation that you can retrain in. By keeping him motivated and keeping him engaged and keeping him able to identify his skills and opportunities, he was able to be more positive in returning to the world of work. Likewise, with the amount of physiotherapy he received, it got him stronger, not just physically, but mentally too. And I think the key takeouts from having an income protection policy is it's not just the financial support, it's all of the additional support services that wrap around that to get you back into the world of work, or if not, to support you on a more day-to-day basis.
He was 42. You know, I was 37 when it happened, and you don't expect it. But if people can learn that, you know, expect the unexpected, because when it does come, let me tell you, your world comes crashing down, and it isn't pleasant.
Money from 7Families helps with things like physio, R, black, E, yellow, H, help with rehab. It's all gone in rehab really, hasn't it? The 7Families money. We pay for two private sessions a week, 80 quid an hour. You know, we pay on physio more than our mortgage. Any help that we can get with that, obviously, you know, we'll appreciate, because it isn't going to be an easy fix.
Paul and Vicky's story was really, really powerful and impactful for me, because I'd never really considered the wider implications of a stroke. So he'd been in hospital 14 months and he'd gone from being completely paralysed and non-verbal to slowly regaining his activity and his independence. And it wasn't just himself, it was also Vicky's, whose life had been put on hold, and 24/7 round the clock as a wife, she was dedicated to him. So she wasn't able to work. So financially, as a family, that was both incomes that was lost. Over and above the support from the NHS, when Paul came out of hospital, it was critical that he had that additional support from the 7Families that enabled him to get additional physio and additional speech therapy. And what really struck home was the fact that they were paying more for the physio than they would on their mortgage. So that's something I hadn't even realised. You know, even the gloves and the equipment, you know, everything was an expense, and it took a whole team effort. So they used the value added service, the Red Arc nurse, the regular contact and support. So all of that fed into a really focused plan on rehabilitation for Paul. And it was really a community effort that actually got him to a place where he could actually communicate and he could move, and he was slowly regaining his independence. So for an industry, we really need to raise more awareness of how important it is that having that additional financial security over and above just the mortgage protection, actually protecting the income is critical, and the value added services in getting people back on track and regaining their independence. It's very, very powerful for financial advisors to be able to look at these videos and really put themselves in the client's shoes and imagine what it would mean for them, because it makes it more powerful in actually the advice that we give and the quality advice, because we're not cutting corners. We're actually taking time to actually imagine what injury, accident, stroke, heart attack, what it actually means for people and their families.
In 2013, Phil turned 40.
Yep.
You'd never guess.
Thanks.
And to celebrate, we were going to go off and travel around Europe on motorbikes. But we got about as far as the borders.
Went round this corner and I looked in my mirrors and saw Nikki there 1 minute following me, and I went and it went to like 2 corners in S Bend, and we came out of the S Bend and I looked in my mirror and I couldn't see Nikki, so I thought, well, she's just taking it really slowly. And then I slowed down and I still couldn't see her, so then I pulled in and I waited a minute and then I didn't see her, so then I turned around and went back. And then when I was going back, I saw some cars coming the other way and they were flashing the lights, so obviously I knew something happened. I didn't know what. And then I just thought, well, Nikki being Nikki, she stopped at an accident.
And unfortunately, I lost control of my bike somehow. I don't quite know what happened. But I ended up going across a dual carriageway and hitting a car. And from then, I was in a hospital, I think in the Borders, for a couple of days.
Yeah, 2 days.
And then I was transferred to the National Spinal Unit in Glasgow, where I was there for the next 11 months and 1 week. And I've got no sensation from about there downwards, and I'm always going to be wheelchair dependent now.
Certainly the finance side that 7Families are going to offer us is making a big difference to me, because it means I don't have to rush back to work. It means I can take the time that I need to do my rehab and make sure I'm as best as I can possibly be. So I'm going to go back, not be a burden to the organisation. I'm going to actually add something and go back and be useful, because I don't want to go back and then 5 minutes later be signed off poorly again. And the rehab side of things and the nursing, I believe that I just need to take every opportunity that I'm given in order to help me, to help the family, and be a valued member of society, really.
I was looking at the videos and the footage from Nikki Thornley, which for me was very impactful. First of all, we shared a name, and then we both have 6-year-old boys. So watching the footage for me was really emotional. So to kind of imagine being me and just having a moment in a day where your life's changed dramatically, kind of really got to my heart. And then watching her kind of come to terms with what was changing and the things that she said about wanting to be able to go back to work. And I kind of got that from really being part of when you're a mum and your identity changes, and then her identity had changed again from like mum and then to people not thinking that she was a police officer anymore. It really, really tugged on my heartstrings. And what for me was the bit that was so difficult to get my head around was that parenting piece. It was that she couldn't get upstairs to put her little boys to bed. And there's a scene where she was trying to get a little boy in a car seat. Oh my goodness. I was like, I couldn't get my little boy in a car seat when he was 3 with my feet and being fully mobile. And just watching her do that really got to you of how difficult it would be to adapt your life around all of that. And the positive from it was her smiley face. She kind of never ever kind of gave up mentally and was always kind of looking to the next step. But that feeling that being financially secure was helping with all of that. So the fact that they had the money to adapt their house so that she was going to be able to, build a new house and going to be able to be all on one level and have all that freedom back to be the mum she wanted to be on all floors. And also the fact that they could still do that with that financial freedom made their story have a happy spin, which sounds like really daft, but the fact that they could stay mentally positive, that they knew that she was going to have that house to move to, gave you an uplifting end to it. It enabled them to still do all that sponsorship and fundraising and all those amazing things.
I think what I find is, the work of the 7Families project, what I find is that with being off work, finance support is always a worry, so having some money to help me on my rehabilitation through the project would be fabulous. It'll allow me to basically take a bit of time out to get back to where I want to be, but not rush it, not get too pressurised.
The case of Graeme Snell is a really interesting one. He's a healthy guy. He talks about running 10 miles a week before he suffered a stroke. He said in his own words he went from 100% to minus 100% in one day. And you can see as part of the videos, during his sick pay period, he's getting back up to what he calls 0%, back to ground zero, but he's nowhere near ready to return to work at the end of his sick pay period. Now, without income protection, it's likely the additional stress of having to go back to work, the financial pressures, and the everyday life that he'd had to go back into would have inhibited his recovery and made him live a less healthy lifestyle going forward. Now, when he was provided with income protection, you could see the weight go from his shoulders. He looks a lot more relaxed. He's able to join support groups where other people have been through similar experiences. He gets the gym membership that he needs to get his health and fitness back to where he wants it to be. He also engages with other programs such as rehab and going to other support groups where you can see visibly he's getting back towards 100%. The main reason the income protection works for him is that he doesn't have to go back to work immediately, and he can really focus on his health for that additional period of time to get better. The income protection also gives him a time to step back and take a look at his life as a whole. He looks at where his career wants to go and where it was going previously. He makes changes to his life that are going to be long-standing and help him live a healthier, happier life going forward. That's the power of income protection for Graeme Snell.
My main career was a driving instructor. That was my only means of income. So I kind of had to do it even though I was really, dead tired. I did that job for 12 years, on and off. And whilst doing it as well, I was also, at times, I had periods of getting ill, have to be hospitalised, and then come out of hospital and get straight back into work, even though maybe I needed a break.
So my family was Paul Norbert. And looking back, it's a long time ago now, 8 years. Looking back, mental health wasn't really kind of talked about as much as it is today. So I can understand the difficulties that Paul was going through. The key points I took out of Paul's story was he was kind of in a cycle of, going to work, then stop working because he couldn't deal with his mental health. And then he was feeling the pressure of going back to work. And that kind of just was a cycle for him that he couldn't seem to break. And he actually needed just time away from what he was doing because, like I say, he was just having these breakdowns every time he seemed to go back to work. So the key points for me was that he didn't really have anybody to talk to as well, apart from a friend, and he wasn't getting the support that he needed. From 7Families and the project that was there, it's allowed him to do things that he probably wouldn't have been able to do, such as, CBT, the support services that came with it. It's also been able to invest in himself. And the important things I took away was that he was further forward by the end of the project. He was further forward to actually going back to work, but not just going back to work, to actually going back successfully. And he's taken his career that he had at the time and moved forward and moved into something where hopefully it'll break that cycle of, going to work, stopping work, and then going back again.
So not only are you not well, you've lost your income, and then you're having to think, well, something I never would have had to do before was apply for benefits, and then going through that whole process is just like kind of soul destroying, really.
I think Melanie's story really shows exactly why income protection is the number one protection of choice. Critical illness is a great product, but it wouldn't pay out in Melanie's case. And Melanie at 40, but she's got 20 years at least of protection of income ahead of her, that probably equates to nearly £1 million of cover. And I think during the story, what her and Jason say, they've got separate bank accounts, and not having one income coming in really sort of shows the devastation it has on a family. I think then you see Anna who then becomes at 21 a full-time carer, putting off her occupation path to look after mum, which is a great thing to do. So the whole devastation around losing an income that you don't expect is really, really important for people to sort of see what happens if you're not insured. I think the real standout is what happens if you don't have income protection. The thought of actually having expenses that come out every single month, the loan, the mortgage or the rent, and then all of a sudden realising that you've got no income. In Melanie's situation, this came completely out of the blue. And then to have the thought of going without any income, probably ever again, is a really frightening proposition. And the whole effect on the family just sort of stands out. I mean, they're getting by, but the boys have both got EDS as well. And Anna, the daughter, she has to go from having an occupation at 21 and doing all the things that a 21-year-old woman wants to do to looking after a mum. That's the devastation. That's the reality of not having income protection in place.
So I think with 7Families, what it's done is it's highlighted 7 very different claims experiences and claim stories and injuries or illnesses that you can claim on. All of them were unpredicted, all of them were unexpected, all of them came about quite suddenly. And what I found most interesting is when you were summarising, or when the families are summarising income protection and the need for income protection, the common theme that ran through was actually they didn't think they needed to take out income protection policies, or they'd had income protection policies but they'd since cancelled because they didn't think it would happen to them. Daniel, in particular, my family that I was looking at, he didn't think that he would get MS. And I think that's a really important message that we can take forward. So nobody thinks they're going to be sick. Nobody thinks they're going to have an accident. Nobody thinks they're going to see a loss of income. But it's those unexpected life events which we just can't predict. And that's where an income protection policy can be the difference between a family struggling financially or a family thriving. What was interesting is that a lot of people think that they don't need income protection because they're working. And I think there's just a bit of education that we've got to do as advisors to help educate clients that you don't need income protection because when you're working or because you're working. You need it when you're unable to work because you're unable to work. And it's just reframing the perception of what income protection actually does and when it's going to be most valuable.
Physically, we come across clients all the time that have physical issues and medical history that really impacts them in the ability to get cover, impacts their daily lives. But somebody that looks perfectly fit and healthy might not be on the mental health side. So it's really important that we kind of use these stories and speak to customers that things like mental health can strike at any time, and it's really important to have that protection in place, so if that does strike, then they're able to take the time off and make a successful return back to work rather than being stuck in that cycle like Paul was.
These are just ordinary people. These are real families which could be your clients, and if it could happen to them, it could happen to your clients as well. The second point is the knock-on effect that this could have. So a loss of earnings in the short term will result in the loss of nice things to do, to maybe not being able to afford things, to not being able to in the longer term be able to invest and save for your future and in pensions and so on. I find also that real life storytelling lifts the statistics off the page as well. People can look at this and go, I understand that, that makes sense. Whereas if you just give people statistics, it doesn't register. People don't make decisions on that basis. Also, our benefit services like physios and counsellors are all part of a decent policy these days. So it's not just about paying income protection. It's about counselling, physios. So I think advisors should fall in love with income protection or fall back in love with income protection, and therefore offering their clients the basis of everything that they're going to recommend in the future. So if they're going to be recommending pensions and investments without an income, they're not going to be able to make those recommendations in future. So look after your income protection, and who wouldn't want that for their clients? Thank you.
The 7Families project really highlights that sick pay over short time periods doesn't necessarily meet the needs of clients. You can see with quite a few of the examples that sick pay only goes so far. Having income protection for that long-term protection and providing financial support can really help people get back to their full working selves and able to go back into life and their work with full energy and after a full recovery.
So losing your independence is financial, emotional and physical. And as an industry, we really need to take time to make our clients aware that it's not just about the financial implications. The rehabilitation is also emotional. It's talking therapies, it's physiotherapies. There are value-added services there. That time is of the essence. So having the access to resources at the key time made it so powerful for Paul's story that when he came out, he had a whole community supporting him. And as advisors, we really need to get more in touch with stories such as Paul and Vicky, so we can actually empower our advice and have quality conversations with our clients.
I think real life stories are just so powerful to show illnesses and events happen to everyday people, to people every day. And what we're doing in the industry is supporting the families against such a devastating loss of income. I mean, you cannot imagine what it would be like not to be able to pay your bills every month. And then I hear sometimes that, it's okay, the state's going to look after us. Well, you have to challenge those questions. So for advisors, income protection is definitely the first port of call for people. And that's what should be discussed, in my opinion.
If you haven't got stories of your own, these give you the stories to talk to the clients about. These give you the stories and real life examples that get your clients to want to have the insurance, and that get you to know that the difference having money versus not having money makes. The other things were the things that were the tiny bits, like the extra physio that she'd used, and when she'd gone to get her car changed ergonomically so that because it was giving her pain when she was driving, that made a massive difference to her, and that was part of the extra benefits that were around. So Those things were all amazing, and definitely as an advisor, go and watch the whole series. I didn't have enough time to do all of them yet, but I will be doing the rest of the 7 Families as well, because you'll learn something from every situation that you hear.
Our hope is that a new generation of advisors will use the 7 Families stories to bring their income protection conversations to life. The campaign taught us so many valuable lessons that in many cases changed the way we worked as an industry. It's important we don't forget the legacy of 7 Families. So here is a reminder of why the stories are so valuable.
Customers don't realise the benefits of income protection till they actually need it. When customers lose their income, their world can come crashing down. That's when they really see the value of income protection. 7 Families reinforce the fact that people who lose their income through sickness, illness or disability are the ones that really want it. By sharing the 7 Families experiences, IPTF demonstrated how important stories are in reinforcing the essential role that income protection plays in protection planning.
So 7 Families was probably the first example of the industry working together to raise awareness about an issue. The long-term benefits are plain for all to see, and more recently, we've seen groups from across the industry collaborating for the common good. Women in Protection, the IPTF, the PDG, to name but a few, a fitting and lasting legacy to the 7 Families campaign.
7 Families is still so relevant today, just as relevant as it was 10 years ago, because we've still got far too many UK consumers who don't understand the need for income protection or even that income protection even exists. So we need to share those stories far and wide to help more advisors have those conversations so more people can have a claim when they need it. Because ultimately, it's such a fantastic product that makes a massively positive difference to people's lives when they need it. And all those 7 Families absolutely illustrate just how valuable income protection can be.
The industry that we work in today is testament to the value that the 7 Families campaign brought to us so many years ago. Red Arc was the name that we all knew and one of the only main ones floating about the industry. But when you look across all the providers today and the GP services, the mental health services, the physio, and the whole raft of additional value benefits that customers can gain, you can really see how the industry has started to develop. It used to be a race as to who could have the most critical illness definitions, but now we're seeing a big change in having a look at how many value-added services we can add for customers and how they can use those in their day-to-day lives.
The 7 Families campaign demonstrated the significance of income protection, as well as showcasing how industry collaboration can effectively raise awareness and support for important causes. By remembering this campaign, the industry can draw inspiration and insight on how to collaborate to address other pressing issues and promote financial well-being for everyone. It serves as a valuable case study for future initiatives and intermediaries, and it underscores the importance of collective action in driving positive change. The other aspect I vividly remember is how invincible are you? A quick test to see how financially invincible you were, and who can forget it?
So for me, 7 Families is a super powerful industry initiative that's created a real awareness of protection, and in particular, income protection. With regards to added value services, the way this resonates with me is I've seen a number of videos over the years that 7 Families have produced with affected families, and those videos have been super powerful. I recall one in particular from a lady called Tracey Clarke, and she said something along the lines of the added value services that she utilised were as important as the actual financial settlement. That's a lesson for us all.
7 Families was real stories about real people. They powerfully brought to life why our income and protecting our income are so important. And through just those 7 families, the campaign really brought home that illness and injury can happen to anyone at any time. And people are affected deeply, not just the person who's injured or ill, but also has profound effects on those around them too. And stuff that income protection can really help with. The 7 family stories are timeless and I think a must watch and must listen for every new starter in our industry. And they're essential repeated viewing for old hands like myself too. They're an encouraging reminder that we're a force for good And with that force carries responsibility, a responsibility to real people. People like Tracey, the Pauls, Daniel, Michael, Nikki and Graeme. Income matters, income protection matters, and we can make it count.
So this campaign absolutely changed the way our industry talks about income protection. The ability to bring together real life stories of 7Families and the impact allowed advisors to start to talk about the reality of what this means. It goes beyond the sales aid, it goes beyond the stat. And customers are then able to apply that could be me. And we all know with our creative minds that once you're faced with examples, it's the what if that was me, what would need to happen? And then the emotion through that actually will drive motion and action. So it has a fundamental impact, and it's really allowed advisors to better engage with customers.
For me, the 7Families campaign was both innovative and highly visionary in its approach to help understand the real benefits and value insurance has to families at a time when they need it most. We as a distributor are still inundated with requests for case studies, and I still refer back to 7Families campaign 10 years ago, which is still as relevant now as it was then.
Someone once said we don't sit around campfires talking about statistics, we tell stories, and this is certainly true when it comes to claims. I was very struck by the recent AMI report, which highlighted that customers, when asked, thought that the industry paid out 49% of claims, where we know it's more like 90% or 95%. If you do have a client who is prevaricating about the need for income protection, I would strongly urge you to get them to take a look at the collateral on the 7Families website, and it will completely transform your protection conversation.
Whenever we talk to people about life insurance or any form of protection, it's always stories more than statistics that are going to make that sale, going to make that product come alive for the customer. The 7Families stories are as relevant today as they were 10 years ago. And even if you don't use those specific stories, those specific case studies, it'll absolutely inspire you to think of your own, from your own lifestyle, from your own life, and from your customers.
So the 7Family stories are pretty remarkable, and they're real life stories. And whether you remember them because at the time of mobilisation of the campaign, they were impactful, or you're relatively new to the industry and you're learning about them now, what they offer you are real life case studies as an advisor to use to mobilise a conversation around protection with customers and potential clients, because no one knows when they're going to need protection. You know, whether you lose your sight, whether you have a stroke, whether you get diagnosed with cancer, whatever it is, we have 7 ready-made case studies of real people like you and me that can inspire an industry and everyone in the protection value chain to really lean into that income protection and wider protection conversation.
Well, I think for me, the 7Families project is as relevant today as it was when it was launched 10 years ago. The circumstances that those families found themselves in can happen to them or any of us today as easily as they did 10 years ago. So for me, the value of income protection cannot be focused on enough. Our advisors and ultimately our customers need to be aware of the challenges that can be faced but can be covered. So for me, the message around income protection is as strong as ever.
So protection products by nature are incredibly complex and detailed, and historically customers have had a real challenge in connecting with what they actually do and what that means to them. And what 7Families has done is allowed the customer to connect and resonate with real life customer outcomes, to really bring the products to life and provide that understanding. And that's what we should remember, is it's that personal connection and association with the products that customers need now and in the future.
It's been fantastic to have the opportunity to reflect on the 7Families project and to remind ourselves both of the power of an industry collaborating together and of the importance of a shared goal, income protection.
7Families changed the industry forever. It taught us the power of storytelling, and it changed the way we talk about our propositions forever. It taught us the power of putting ourselves in our customers' shoes and understanding the difference we can make. It showed us that we should be proud of what we do.
7Families has a lasting legacy. The lessons we learned 10 years ago are just as relevant today. The points that were raised by our families a decade ago resonate as strongly now, and the content is just as relevant for advisors to use with clients. To celebrate the 10-year anniversary of 7Families, we'll be resharing the content with advisors and reminding them that the content is free to use for training and with clients. We'll also be adding 7Families themed resources to our website, so subscribe to our email newsletters if you haven't already, check out our website and follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram. Most importantly, keep the legacy of 7Families going and make sure you're talking about income protection.
7Families. 7 stories highlighting the need for income protection, and 7 incredible stories advisors can use to empower themselves when helping clients improve their financial resilience. It's now up to you to use these resources to the fullest, to keep the momentum in the income protection market.